All right. Today we are talking about a couple of different topics. So we have four different topics today. We're talking about a book that I would recommend, a little known tool that I would recommend for you to use as well. Someone in my network that has had a big impact on me, and I want you to know all about them. And then finally, a big issue that's affecting my industry, which is the podcasting world. My guest today is actually Chad Franzen, who's going to be interviewing me in this episode. So stick around.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I'm the host of this show, and we actually have a different format today. Now, you know from past episodes that every week I interview smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs, all kinds of companies. We've had Netflix, we've had Grubhub, we've had Redfin, Gusto, you name it. But today we're going to switch things around, and Chad Franzen is going to be interviewing me. And of course, this episode, before we get to that, is brought to you by Rise25, our company where we help B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with done for you podcasts and content marketing. Go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25, and we'll tell you all about what we do. All right, Chad, I'm excited for this format. I'll turn it over to you.
All right, sounds good. Today we're going to talk about a recent book that you have read or listened to, a little known tool that you use, someone in your network who has impacted you, and an issue in your industry. So let's start out with the book. What's a book that you've either listened to or read recently that's kind of been memorable for you?
Yeah, so I heard about this book a couple of months ago, and it's called What's Next? A Backstage Pass to the West Wing, its cast and crew, and its enduring legacy of service. It's by Melissa Fitzgerald and Mary McCormick, who were both on the show. They were actually actors on the show. And it was really cool to go back and hear the whole history of that show. I was a big fan of it at the time. We'll link to, I don't need to tell it again, but we'll link to a story about how I was involved in the original creation of the show. But it was really cool to go back and hear kind of behind the scenes stories about what that show was like. And it's, the show premiered 25 years ago now. It was just such an exceptional, high quality television. And the book also highlights some of the public service work that the members of the cast and crew actually engaged in. So beyond just being kind of a salute to public service as far as entertainment goes, they also talked about some of the work that they did behind the scenes, whether it was like charitable events that they did, showing up, volunteering their time, a lot of different stuff that they did that wasn't really highlighted. I didn't know about, so that was cool as well.
Yeah, so you were on staff in the White House in the 90s with Bill Clinton. Did it spur memories for you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's fiction, and they filmed it on a soundstage in Los Angeles. So, it did spur memories to like watching the shows at the time. So they talked about some of the individual episodes. There's also a podcast called West Wing Weekly that Josh Malina, another actor on the show, created starting back in 2016, and they did it for a number of years. I think they still sometimes put out other episodes as well. And they go through every single episode of The West Wing. So yeah, it definitely did spur some memories going back and thinking about those episodes. And, the first year of the show, I was still at the White House, and it was a huge hit. It was a huge hit nationwide, but it was also a huge hit for everyone in the was working in the White House at the time to have this show that was on television. This is back when people watched television, not just streaming, but people would show up and watch it on the night that it was on. But yeah, it was definitely brought back some memories of that.
So you kind of alluded to you were part of maybe a small part of the creation of the show. Can you give us the Reader's Digest version of that?
Sure. So I had worked actually in Hollywood in the entertainment industry before I went to go work at the White House. So it's a little bit unusual background. And I knew someone who was working on a show about politics. This was before The West Wing came on. This was a 98 or 99, something like that. And of course, I knew the person because he'd written a show called The American President, and it was Aaron Sorkin. And so she connected me with him, and I told him what my life was like. This was when he was in the research phase before the show was on the air. And, I didn't give away any state secrets. I didn't have that high level security clearance or anything like that. But I told him what my life was like. And I'll leave it at this. There were episodes that brought pieces of my life and my experience and that were the inspiration for those episodes as a result of that information. So we have a podcast episode, I think, that was titled How I Got Rob Lowe to Play Me on TV. Rob Lowe, of course, was one of the characters, played Sam Seaborn on The West Wing. So people can go check that out, check out that episode if they want.
Nice, very nice. So our next topic is going to be a little known tool that you use. ChatGPT is not a little known tool, but you use it in maybe a unique way that's been helpful to you.
Yeah, so I just started doing this recently, but you can create custom GPTs on any topic and you can give it specific instructions. So if you have like a 200-page contract that you need to reference over and over again and you need to read little pieces of it or understand it in some better way, you can upload that, create a custom GPT, and then like bookmark it and go back to it again and again. Of course, as a lawyer, I not practicing anymore, but I would say you shouldn't just rely on that. You should go back and read the actual source. But it's a great way to get a summary or to get into some of the kind of understanding of the meat of the document when a lot of these things are so dense that people just don't take the time to read through them. So it's a wonderful tool as far as that's concerned. And it doesn't just have to be a contract. It can be other things. You can create different GPTs for marketing. Like you could say, I'm going to create a GPT for my LinkedIn posts, and you can feed into it other LinkedIn posts that you've done or others have done and say, I want you to draft me posts on this new topic. You could say like the Super Bowl is coming up, so I want you to write me a post that talks about my industry in the context of the Super Bowl, so it's timely, but I want you to use as inspiration these other LinkedIn posts that someone else has created because I want it to be in the same style and the same tone. And then you can just keep that. It's almost like your aide that's going to help with that particular task whenever that task comes up. So that's something I'm really excited about.
Very nice. What kind of sparked that idea in terms of that kind of use of ChatGPT?
I knew that was a capability, and when GPTs first came out, I had tested them a little bit, but I hadn't quite figured out what I would use it for. And then just more recently, I had a couple of instances where I had a very long, dense document, contract type of document, where I just knew I would need to be referencing it over and over again, and I wanted to be able to find information quickly in it rather than wading into a 200-page document. And I thought, and I don't remember, maybe I listened to a podcast episode and someone else gave me this idea, but I just kind of like light bulb moment. I was like, I could create these GPTs and then like bookmark them and come back to them over and over again. And so I started doing that, and it's been really helpful. And then you can share it with other people. You can give it to someone else and say, here, you can reference it here as well. So if it's something that people come to you and ask you requests all the time, like what's that piece of information or something. Well, if you create a resource like this, then you can share the link with them and they can go ask the questions that they have and can drill down and ask follow-up questions and things like that.
Very nice. Our next topic is someone in your network who has impacted you. Before we started, you mentioned that Rob Castaneda is somebody who has impacted you recently.
Yeah. So Rob Castaneda, Service Rocket is his company. Rob has been a friend. He's been a mentor. He's been an inspiration. He's been a leader. He's a member of EO San Francisco, so I know him through that. We were in Forum together for a while. He was president of our chapter, and I was fortunate to serve on his board. And just someone that I've turned to again and again. He inspired me to take a pause on drinking about 10, 11 months ago. It's been almost a year, actually. So he's been really inspirational for me. And I love calling him a friend. I love being able to turn to him and see how he would approach different issues and how he chooses to lead, the leadership choices that he makes. And then just seeing him, lead his company. He's got a very large company with an international group of people that are different parts of the globe. And just, he's been there, done that, been doing it for 20 plus years, running his company for 20 plus years. It really is an inspiration for me. I'm really just saying all this because I'm trying to get Rob on my podcast, and I've asked him before. He hasn't come on before. So maybe if he hears this, he will finally come on as a guest.
We'd love to hear from you, Rob.
It's my
What kind of
secret,
a
my secret, ulterior motive.
what kind of effect did the pause on drinking have on you?
Yeah, it. I I wanted to do something that was better for my health, so it's a big step. I'm not one of these people. I call it pause on drinking because I don't want to have it be like just cold turkey, and there be a fear that if I have a beer that I'm gonna like fall off the wagon and go
Mhm.
back to drinking again. I felt like I was drinking a little bit too much, which wasn't a ton, but it was like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, couple of drinks, 2 or 3 drinks, usually wine. And it was just, I felt like as I'm getting older, my head was getting a little foggier. We went on vacation, not vacation, but we traveled over the summer before last, and we were in Oregon, which has great beer. And I would try a new beer every night, and just like one, but it was every night, which I
Mhm.
don't usually do. And about 3 weeks into that, my head was just feeling very foggy. I was kind of grasping for words. I wasn't as articulate as I like to think I am, usually under normal circumstances. And so that partly inspired it also. And it's just, I have less headaches. I feel more refreshed when I wake up in the morning. Um, it doesn't solve everything, but it definitely has been a positive for me.
Good to hear. Very good to hear. Next topic involves podcasts, something in your industry. I guess people ask, if they should create a podcast with a unique angle or approach that hasn't been done before. What are kind of your thoughts on that? Maybe you have an example you can share with us.
Absolutely. So actually, I was listening recently. I've been listening to a lot of humor podcasts lately, and I was listening to the Family Trips podcast with Seth Meyers and his brother Josh, do it together. And I'm a big fan of Seth Meyers. Josh does great impressions of Governor Gavin Newsom on the Jimmy Kimmel show. So I'm a big fan of both of theirs. But I think that this illustrates a little bit of sometimes we get people come to us who are saying like, "Oh, I only want to do a podcast if I can come up with some unique angle that's never been done before." And sometimes that doesn't serve them. They think that it does, but it doesn't. And in this case, they had Jim Gaffigan as a guest on the show. And Jim is, he's absolutely hilarious. And he was trying to get into his material that he had on the topic of family trips and vacations, which he has a fair amount. But then they kept on asking him questions about other things where he didn't have material. And so sometimes it doesn't make your guest look the best. And if the guest doesn't feel like they were able to shine, they don't have the best experience from it. So sometimes a little bit of overcommitment to having to have a unique angle on something doesn't serve you as well as you think that it would. Now that's an entertainment podcast. That's different from what we do, which is a B2B podcast where really what the guest experience is more important. And I don't think Jim really felt uncomfortable or anything like that. But I just felt like that was a very good example of um, the perils of being overly committed to having this completely unique angle. The other peril of it is that people put off starting a podcast for months, if not years, if they can't find that unique angle that's never been done before. Have had a million people tell me this, that they haven't done a podcast because they haven't found some unique angle. So hopefully they will listen to this as an example of why they shouldn't wait, and people I mean, I just amazing relationships that I've developed with friends and people that I've gotten to know, which I would be deprived of if I had put off starting a podcast because I was waiting for some thing to come down like manna from heaven, right? And so I think that people should consider that. Just sometimes the uniqueness is you. The uniqueness is the conversation that will unfold between you and your guest regardless of anything else. That conversation will be unlike any other conversation that's ever happened in human history and ever will. And so just allow that to be your uniqueness. That's wonderful.
There you go. That's a great way of looking at it. Hey, bonus question for you. As you look back on your childhood, what was a highlight?
So this was inspired by our conversation beforehand. And I realized that, this was definitely the highlight of my childhood, probably my life, and it's just been downhill since then. So I'm dating myself, but I was a huge fan of Knight Rider. Knight Rider was a show that was on in the early 80s with David Hasselhoff and a talking autonomous car, which doesn't quite seem like science fiction today, considering that there are some in San Francisco, different cities and stuff like that. But it was absolutely crazy because I grew up in Los Angeles. My dad was an entertainment reporter on television, and he surprised me when I was 7 years old by taking me down to it. They were filming the Knight Rider movie. He took me down and I watched them film it. And then he interviewed David Hasselhoff afterwards, which was kind of within his, what he did for a living, with me sitting there. And then I got to ask questions of David Hasselhoff, which were bizarrely specific about past episodes and like quirks, like in the script. I think he was just like, kid, like, go away. Like, it didn't matter. But it was definitely the highlight of my childhood, of my lifetime, probably of all time. And I will definitely find it because I know at some point we uploaded it to YouTube. Because my dad then did a story that evening on television that was the product of that. And it was about like taking his sons down to see, Knight Rider. I mean, it'd be the equivalent of today taking like a 9-year-old girl to go see Taylor Swift and then having her meet her backstage. Like it was, there was no better highlight for me. Hasn't really aged the same way that you would think it would, but yeah.
So for you, you met David Hasselhoff, the star of Knight Rider, star of Baywatch, probably the star of other shows, but you went on to meet other, famous people, presidents, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama. How does David Hasselhoff, meeting David Hasselhoff when you were a child compared to meeting those guys, later as an adult?
Oh man, don't hassle the Hoff, man. Don't hassle the Hoff. It doesn't even hold a candle. World leaders, presidents, no. It's got to be the Hasselhoff at the peak of his fame in 1983 or 84 or whatever it was.
Perfect. Hey, John, great to talk to you. Thanks so much for having me today.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
So long, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.